I said a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about some of the what used to be considered standard proofs of evolution that really should be removed from textbooks, but haven't been yet, but have found to be lies, just plain, flat-out misconception. And I talked about a particular evolutionist, in fact. His name is Dr. Jerry Coyne. And Dr. Jerry Coyne said when he found out that the pepper moth demonstration was fake, he said it was like when he was a child learning that Santa Claus wasn't real. It really struck him. The pepper moth thing that's in every science book that you will stumble across, whether at high school level, junior high school level, or college level, was completely staged. It had nothing to do with reality. It's all a fake. And Jerry Coyne now realizes that, and he says, well, it really shook me. And he said, but we have some good proofs of evolution, and we should focus on the good proofs of evolution. Okay, now here's the man that said, well, my foundation shook when I discovered that the pepper moth situation is all phony. It's all fake. The moths don't light on trees during the day. The pictures that you see in textbooks, they were glued on there. Actually glued onto the tree trunks, and they admit it. Turns out that the moths live in the leaves, and a whole bunch. I went through that already. Well, here's one of the things that Dr. Coyne suggests is really a proof of evolution, one of the good proofs of evolution. It has to do with hair. And it turns out that many scientists, including Dr. Coyne, believe that the fetus, as it develops in the mother's womb, is hairy. And it has hair in it. You don't realize this. And he claims, Dr. Coyne claims, well, this is embryonic recapitulation. And it shows that the human, when it goes through its development in the womb, is going back to its ancestral stage of a hairy ape. Well, see, but that's also been disproved. This goes back to Ernst Haeckel and his theory of recapitulation, which was proven to be a fake in 1901. He was convicted of fraud in 1901. That's also disproved. But what about hairy children? Every once in a while, like there's a picture here of a young child that's covered with hair. It's born prematurely and it's covered with hair. Well, it turns out that that's lanugo. Let's see, I want to get the pronunciation right. There are three types of hair that come out of a hair follicle. Lanugo hair. It's grown during the development stage in the womb, and it just flushes off and stays in the embryonic fluid. Now, if this were true, if there was a flashback to an old time, then there should be a lot more hair follicles in a baby than there are in an adult, right? There should be different numbers of hair follicles. There aren't. Turns out that, this is interesting, this was fascinating. No matter what stage you are in your life, you have as much hair as you ever did. A baby has, believe it or not, there are three kinds of hair, and I know some of you are chuckling about that. Lanugo is the one I have trouble with. Lanugo hair is hair that's grown by the baby out of the hair follicle as the hair follicle develops in the womb. Like right now, we have a young child developing that's probably full of hair, a very hairy child. At birth, that hair is primarily gone, and when you see premature births, oftentimes you will find, as this picture shows, this hair. Well, the next stage is hair that's called, and I want to get this, I want to pronounce this right too, vellus hair. Now, why can't I find that word? There are three types of hair: lanugo hair, vellus hair, and terminal hair. Okay, vellus, I got it right. Vellus hair comes out of the same hair follicle. It's very short, very thin, same diameter as the lanugo hair, but very, very short. Men and women have the same number of hair follicles. And the reason that women don't have mustaches and beards is because they never go past the vellus hair stage. Terminal hair is what men grow all over their face, on the top of their head, and sometimes out of their ears. But it never. You have the same number of hair follicles, and they're always active. So even though you may not think so, if you looked real closely, according to Dr. Menton, if you look real closely, you would find hair follicles with vellus hair growing out of the tops of some heads around here. Same number of hair follicles, always active. They grow different kinds of hair. In the baby, it's called lanugo hair, and it washes off in the embryonic fluid. At birth, it's called vellus hair. Women grow vellus hair. Men grow vellus hair. As the man's body changes and his hormonal balance changes, he grows terminal hair. And then as he gets older, the terminal hair isn't terminal, it goes back to vellus hair, which you can hardly see. Does this show a recapitulation to a gorilla? Of course not. You have the same number of hair follicles as a baby that you have as an adult. Men and women share equal numbers of hair follicles. The difference is that women do not grow terminal hair on the face, only on the head. Men grow terminal hair on the face and the head. I got to share with you this cute little story. It hasn't much to do with my creation moment, but I got to share with you. I was sitting here one night, and a young lady in the church comes up to me, and she's looking at me. After the missionary, Dave Carter, was here, and she looked at me, and I'm looking at her, and she looked at me, and I kept looking, and I said, hi. And she said, hi. And she said, Pastor, you have hair growing out of your ears. And I said, that's true. As you get older, hair grows out of your ears more. If you're a man, that's absolutely true. But the number of hair follicles in there are exactly the same when I was 5 years old as now. It's just that at this age, all of the energy is going into terminal hair coming out of my ears instead of the top of my head. The fact that a hairy baby, and think about this now, Dr. Jerry Coyne, a very well-respected, practicing evolutionary microbiologist, teaching now at the University of Chicago, I believe, calls this a proof of evolution. Think about that. The fact that babies have lanugo hair, and sometimes when they're born, look hairy, this is proof of evolution. Wow. Is that all he's got? Is that what he's got to stand on? I'd rather go back to the lies of the pepper moth. This is ridiculous. It's proof of nothing of the sort. It's proof of design. It's proof that God designed a human being to grow certain kinds of hair at different stages in the development of that human being. Why God chose to have men lose the terminal hair off the top of their heads later on, I don't know. Or why he caused terminal hair to grow in great proliferation out of ears when men grow over 50, I don't know. But it's all part of God's design. Think about that. This is identified by Dr. Jerry Coyne from the University of Chicago as a proof of evolution that is a good proof to replace the pepper moth, which now has to go away. And by the way, if you have a science book in your possession anywhere that shows the pepper moth, you ought to tell your teacher, this has to go away. It's all a lie. This is what he's got? Huh. Very sad. Proof of design is all your hair is, and nothing more. Thank you. I don't have the, what's the title this morning? How did I word that? Oh, science, fact, not fiction. Science, fact, not fiction is the title of the creation moment this morning. That's critical. Science is fact, it is not fiction. There's an interesting article in the latest issue of Creation magazine by a Dr. Sammy Shaybani. And this is the picture of the guy, Dr. Shaybani. He teaches physics in Virginia. He lives in Virginia. They don't identify the university, I think for obvious reasons, but he teaches physics to physicians. That's what he does. And he's also considered a worldwide expert on body injury, the physics of damage to your body. Dr. Shaybani testifies frequently in the courts relative to, well, especially with children and injuries in children. He's a physicist himself. He has a PhD in physics. And as I say, he teaches surgeons and medical practitioners the physics of medicine, so to speak. And this guy is a creationist. I love some of the things that he says. He said once when he was cross-examined by a defense attorney, why babies' skulls do not easily fracture. His whole point is that dropping a baby on the floor will probably not fracture the skull. And he's got a long answer here that he talks about the plates in the baby's skull and how soft they are and whatnot and the fact that they slide, etc., etc. And he said, why do baby skulls not fracture easily, the attorney says. And Dr. Shaybani says, to be honest with you, sir, I believe that's the way God designed them. They were designed that way. Dr. Shabani is a Christian, a born-again Christian. He also is a Gideon. He says he belongs to the well-known Bible distributing organization called the Gideons, and that doesn't surprise me. Someone of that nature would probably definitely want to be a Gideon. But I like what he says here, relative to science being fact and not fiction. It's the arrogance of man, it's a quote now by Dr. Shabani, to say that because we've had 100 years of data, we can extrapolate backwards almost infinitely. If my students did an experiment with 2 data points that ridiculously close to each other and tried to extrapolate them by orders of magnitude, I would fail them. It is just too ridiculous. In man-made dating methods, again I'm quoting Dr. Shabani, there is assumption upon assumption with a couple of more assumptions sprinkled in, some blind guesswork, and this masquerades as science. Dr. Shabani closes with, there's a lack of honesty here. If somebody is wants to guess, that's fine. He said, okay, friend, I don't have a problem with your guessing, but tell me it's a guess. Do not try to corrupt science by calling your guess fact. Now, when he talks about the age of the earth, that's what he's talking about, is the data points. You got a couple data points, you've been observing something for a short time, and you extrapolate back 4 billion years. That's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? If you had a chart, you would have a piece of paper. If you had it big enough, you'd have 2 little data points over here. And by looking at these data points, you're trying to say what happened with the chart going outside the church wall. I did this at Kennebunk Christian Academy, and I think the kids loved it, and they picked right up on it. It was a thought I had sitting in the hot tub one night. And I get my best thoughts when I'm wet. Oops. As a scientist, or knowing what science is observation, science is fact. It's not fiction. If you go to the fiction section of a library, you will not find books there about organic chemistry. You have to go to a science section to find books on organic chemistry. Well, what is it that makes up science? What is it that a scientist knows? Now, when scientists date something, my wife was reading in I think it was Smithsonian, about a lava explosion that they said, well, this particular activity was over 3 million years old. Well, how do they know that? Not a single human being is 3 million years old. Even your parents aren't 3 million years old. You may think some of your teachers are. What is it that a scientist knows? What can you determine about this candle? Well, you can watch it burn. That's science. Right? Now, as I say, I did this at KCA, and the kids jumped right into this. You can measure how tall that candle is. It turns out it's about 6 inches tall to the base of the candle. Now, if I can measure how fast this candle burns, can't I? It's about 6 inches tall. I can go away for an hour, come back for an hour. If I did that, you guys would all be gone. But if I could come back for an hour, measure it again, and maybe I'll find that it's burnt down 1/2 inch. That's about the rate that it burns. Approximately 1/2 inch an hour, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. I've not stayed around and played with it that much. So I can determine the rate of burning. I can see something happening. In carbon-14, carbon-12 dating, you can see something happening. You can measure the half-life of the carbon-14. You can measure it slowly disappearing. In potassium strontium, which is the latest dating technique used in rocks and lava, in the lava flows, you can see what's going on. You can measure the half-life of the reaction, the going on, the isotope reaction. I can see the candle burning. What can I say about how long it's been burning? You happen to see me light it, but if I had lit it before you came into the room, how long would you know that it had been burning? Well, here's what you can do. As a scientist, you can measure the base of the candle. Turns out the base of the candle is about 1 inch. The top of the candle is about 1/2 inch. Okay, so that means then again, now I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to assume that the candle was made with the same taper. Therefore, a candle could be 12 inches long. Over a 6 inch space, it shrinks down from 1 inch to a ½ inch, so to get to 0 would be another 6-inch space. So that's 12 inches. I can make that assumption. Okay, I can assume it started at point 0. And then I can say, well, clearly then, since this candle is 6 inches tall, this has been burning for 12 hours. I can say that. Would I be right? You don't know, do you? I might be right. I may not be right. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be, because I have another candle exactly like it. It turns out that the candle is actually only 8 inches tall. So therefore, it's only been burning 4 hours. Can I make that assumption? Not really. Not really, because what if this has been burning in a carbon dioxide environment? It will burn much more slowly. In that case, my dates would be far too short. I mean, too long, rather. It would be much shorter. What if it was burning in an oxygen-rich environment? In that case, my guess would be off again. If it was burning in an oxygen-rich environment, it would be burning much quicker, so what I thought was 12 hours would really be 4 hours, or 3 hours, or 2 hours. I guess I got that backwards. If it was a CO2 environment, it would be much, much longer. All right? Then it would be longer than 12 hours. It would be maybe 24 hours. But those are guesses. I don't know what's happened, because I haven't been here to watch this burning all the time. They're measuring rocks that are millions, and some of them billions, they think, years old. Since no one was around to watch, they've made assumptions that they know what was there to start with. In the case of potassium strontium, it was 0 strontium. They've assumed that. They've assumed the candle came to a point. Were they right? Actually, no. In New Zealand just last year, there was a volcano eruption, and a sample of the lava was sent to a lab in Boston. They dated it as 3,500,000 years old. But it wasn't. It was about a week old when the sample was taken. There were seals that had been shot in the Antarctic, dated with carbon-14-12 method, as being 4,500 years old, dead-wise. They've been dead for 4,500 years. They were only dead for about a week. Crazy assumptions. The point of all this, when you see a candle burning, what is it that you know from science? You know that it's burning. What can you tell from science? You can measure how fast it's burning. Is there anything else you can tell from science? No! Nothing! Everything else is a guess. Everything else is based on assumptions. And like Dr. Shabani says, it's okay to guess, but tell me that you're guessing. Don't tell me that it's science. There are only 2 things about this candle that you can determine from science. One is that it's burning. You can tell that. Hold your hand over and you can tell real quick. The other one is how fast it's burning. You cannot tell when it was lit. You don't know how long the candle was when it started burning. You don't know if it has been burning at the same speed. You only know how fast it's burning now. All you know from science is the reaction that's going on. That's it. You know that there is a reaction going on, and you know how fast that reaction is going on now. You don't know what was happening 4 million years ago. You don't know what was happening 1,000 years ago. You get the point? I thought this was a nice way to show, like Dr. Shabani's comment, is that guessing is okay, but please tell us it's a guess. And when scientists tell you that something is 3 million years old, it's a guess. It's not science. Thank you. Didn't spill a drop. This morning is vicious vegetarian vulture. One of the presuppositions that the world uses, that evolutionists use in the proposition of the theory of evolution, the promoting of the theory of evolution, is that it is clear that the Bible can't be right, because the Bible says that creatures were created by God, and in the first chapter of the book of Genesis it tells us that creatures were designed to eat nuts, berries, fruits, living and vegetation, not each other. But they say, well, look at the design of things. Obviously, these certain creatures are designed to tear flesh apart. An example of that is this really ugly-looking vulture here. Here's a vulture with a hooked beak, obviously designed to tear flesh apart, right? And you know what it eats? Palms, dates. It eats dates. It's a palm vulture. Its beak is designed to tear palm trees apart so it can get into the nut of the date itself. It's a palm nut vulture. I guess that's a date. I think dates grow on palm trees, but whatever the palm nut is, this thing eats it. And I'm not real sure. It's not designed to tear flesh apart. I have a dog. Well, I don't now. Actually, my daughter has a dog. We had a dog. Dog has teeth that are designed to tear meat, right? Designed to eat meat. Well, my dog would just as soon, in fact, my other dog would just as soon eat blueberries as he would meat. Bears, actually I discovered in a little bit of research, bears prefer eating berries over meat. Lions look like they're designed, don't they, to tear things apart. Well, there's a picture here of a lion called Little Tyke. Little Tyke lived to be quite old. Little Tyke was a movie actress. She starred in a number of movies. Little Tyke could not eat meat. She got sick on meat. She had to eat vegetables. She was born and raised on a vegetarian diet, and the veterinarians were quite upset with the owners of Little Tyke because they said, you're being cruel to this critter because you're not feeding her meat. You're feeding her vegetables, and she can't do well on that. Well, she did do well on that. And by the way, as I said at KCA last week, if I were going to star in a movie with a lion, I would much rather be with a vegetarian lion. And I'm sure you would too. My teeth can eat soybeans or it can eat meat. It's the presupposition behind it. And I know creationists have said in the past, well, there's been a change in creation. Well, there could have been. I'm not saying that's not a possibility. They're saying, oh, maybe lions look a little different now than they did when they were first created. I don't think so. I don't think you can tell by looking at the teeth what that thing eats. I think that's a basic presupposition. You've already decided if it has a certain shaped tooth, it has to eat this. If you have a certain shaped beak, it's designed to tearing meat apart. It's a presupposition you've made. It's a presupposition that scientists have made. And science has been wrong before. I shared last week Dr. Sami Shabani, the physicist who teaches in Virginia, teaches doctors the physics of medicine. And he says, don't rely on science. It wasn't too long ago when railroads were first invented that the best science known to man said that a human being could not travel faster than 30 miles an hour. The lungs would collapse at 30 miles an hour. Now the only people that travel at 30 miles an hour are those in front of you when you're trying to get to church, right? The rest of us go quite a bit faster. Basic presuppositions based on erroneous science is what it is. Look at it without a presupposition and all of a sudden things change. Things change. I went to a creation talk done by Dr. Gary Parker from Answers in Genesis at the University of Maine. And he mentioned Tyrannosaurus Rex. Looks like he's very vicious. Big, sharp teeth. Obviously designed to rip living things apart. Not so sure anymore. Most scientists aren't so sure. The teeth of T-Rex are so loosely stuck into his gums that one non-Christian scientist, an evolutionist scientist, said, I don't think T-Rex was as fearful as we think. If he bit a larger dinosaur, he would leave all of his teeth behind. Much like Grandpa Jones, right? It's the presupposition. This vulture that looks like it's designed to tear meat apart really is designed to tear fruits and vegetables apart. In fact, palm nuts. Your teeth, what do you use them for? Sometimes you eat meat, sometimes you eat fruit. Has nothing to do with your design. You're designed to eat whatever is in front of you. So when the Bible says that God created animals and us and told us to eat vegetables, he meant it. That's been changed because of the fall. It's okay to go home and have a hamburger. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we need to be vegetarians. I have a daughter that is, and she's very healthy. She will not eat anything made out of meat. Or my son's shaking his head, yeah. It's a problem with her, and we have to find something for her to eat when she comes to visit. It was worse when she lived with us. I've never had so many vegetable concoctions in my life. And you can eat what you choose to eat. It's a choice issue on what you eat. It's not a design issue. Little Tyke, the lion, chose to eat vegetables. Other lions choose to eat meat. You can choose to eat meat, you can choose to eat vegetables. It's a choice issue. It's not a design issue. That's the bottom line. Thank you. Okay. Wisdom from Communist China was the title of the creation moment this morning. A little bit different this morning, not looking at science per se. I'm going to look at something that was quoted, as a matter of fact, in the Boston Globe on May 30th of 2000 on page E1. And it kind of blows me away, and I think it'll surprise you too. The Chinese, who are communists, that's the politics of China. Most of the Chinese are atheists. Well, here's what they say. They have attacked the Darwinian theory, and what they're saying is they argue that neo-Darwinism cannot explain the sudden appearances of the major animal groups in the fossil record. All of a sudden, kaboom, they're all there. There is no slow build-up. When I was at KCA just a couple weeks ago, one of the things I do there every time that I go there is show them the geologic column chart, which is the Bible for geologists. And it shows this steady progression of very simple objects at the bottom, like one-celled amoebas and things like that, and slowly working up through layer to layer to layer, and it labels all the layers and whatnot, and that's where you get Jurassic Park, right from the Jurassic layer, if you will, about a period. Only problem is it doesn't exist anywhere in the world. There is no such thing as the geologic column showing up anyplace. It's put together in parts and pieces, and it's not real. It's really imaginary. Well, all of a sudden, in real life, everything shows up at once. The simple and the complex. And as a Christian, you could say, well, duh, God created it all at once in over a 6-day period. The Chinese, who don't know God, who are atheists, have recognized this. This is cute here. It says, some Chinese officials contend that the theory of evolution, listen to this now, is so politically charged in the West that researchers are reluctant to admit shortcomings for fear of giving support to the biblical creationists. So you get scientists in America that are just plain afraid to say anything negative about the theory of evolution for fear that they're providing firewood to our bonfire. How about that? Interesting. The Chinese go on to say evolution is facing an extremely harsh challenge. This comes out of the Communist Party's magazine. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it for you. They mocked Darwinian orthodoxy by declaring, in the beginning, Darwinian evolution was a scientific theory. In fact, now, evolution has changed into a religion in the West. That's a quote from the Boston Globe from the Chinese Communist newspaper that I would not even try to pronounce. It's a something daily. Let that sink in for a second. Do you hear what the Communist Chinese are saying? You hear what they're saying about the teaching of evolution in America? Doesn't it surprise you ever when you watch programs that are so insistent on evolution, when it's only a theory, and any other theory, they will identify it as a theory and give the opposing view. On evolution, they will not identify it as a theory. It is being taught as with religious fervor as fact. And isn't it interesting that a godless, communist group of scientists are able to see that and perceive that and have this spiritual perception that we in the West don't have? And do you know that the majority of the problems that the Answers in Genesis people deal with, the majority of insults and attacks, do not come from scientists at all, but from church theologians, leaders of liberal churches? The most vicious debate, Ken Ham said when he came up to the University of Maine, that he's ever had was with theologians. They're insulting. They're not even scientific. They don't know science, but they're insulting in their approach. Why? Because evolution has become a religion. And the communists see that. I think that's interesting. They close the article where they suggest that biologists need to come up with an entirely new mechanism other than the current neo-Darwinism offered as a theory for the explosion in the Cambrian layer, or for the sudden occurrence of all these fossils, simple and complex, all at once. Think about that as you drive home today. When your kids go to school, and you're being told that there is a separation between church and state. We support here very little, but we provide a little bit of money to the Christian Law Association, and we have a bulletin that comes once a month. It's on the table back there. Take it home and read it and bring it back. Right now, I don't think anybody reads it. Take it and do something with it. But do you realize that the Christian Law Association is kept busy doing nothing more than defending the right of public school children to carry things like a Bible to school to read in their own time? There's a battle going on here. You're not supposed to intermix religion and school, and yet the minute that you walk into a biology classroom, they are teaching the religion of evolution. They're teaching that there is no God. That is the basis, the foundation of evolution. There is no God. So think about that. Let that sink in. They're teaching a religion. They're teaching atheism. The minute you teach classic evolution, you are teaching atheism. You cannot get away from it. And do you know who God has just used to open our eyes? Maybe a little bit. I hope unfortunately, churches probably won't listen to this. I think that probably the liberal churches are the most difficult people to reach. Communist China. Communist China recognizes that evolution, as taught in America, is a religion. It's taught with religious fervor. Think about that. Thank you. Einstein's golf. Einstein wrote a book, actually, in response to Bertrand Russell and some of his thoughts and ramblings about education and knowledge. And Einstein's golf is basically this. In fact, I'll read this quote. This is a quote. This is Einstein himself. "We have the habit of combining certain concepts and conceptual relations so definitely with certain sense experiences," don't worry, I'll make this clear in a minute, "that we do not become conscious of the gulf, logically unbridgeable, which separates the world of experience from the world of concepts and propositions." What Einstein is saying, I need a couple of volunteers here. Let me see. Lauren, want to come up? You come up. And Chelsea? Okay. Because you guys are going to be too extreme. You hold that. This is Einstein's golf. Objects and events, in other words, stuff, and here's the other side, is ideas and concepts, thoughts. Now you hold that. Now, the problem is, how do you go from objects and events to ideas and concepts? We're talking now classical evolution. We're talking no God. This is the evolution of Stephen Jay Gould. This is the evolution of Darwin. This is the evolution that's being taught in schools today, here in Biddeford and in Saco. This is classic evolution. And Einstein, who was not a friend of God, but Einstein was impeccably logical. Einstein was brilliant, a brilliant scientist. And he understood, and in fact his quote is, unbridgeable, logically unbridgeable, to go from, how do you go from objects and events to ideas and thoughts? Does evolution make that bridge? It doesn't reach, does it? Evolution means that once upon a time there was a rock. In the presence of a certain kind of atmosphere, that rock, or the particles in it, became life. That life slowly evolved over eons, long periods of time, into a frog, and the frog evolved slowly into a person, a prince or a princess. Well, how do you go from here to there? How do you make that bridge? Evolution is too short. It doesn't reach, does it? It doesn't work. Einstein says in his quote, and I'm going to now challenge Einstein. That's tricky, isn't it? He says, logically unbridgeable. No, it isn't. It's not logically unbridgeable. It is unbridgeable logically to an atheist. It is logically unbridgeable to a person like Albert Einstein who has rejected God But if you have not rejected God, it's not logically unbridgeable at all. If you have not rejected God, it is logically bridgeable. In other words, a creator takes objects and events and molds them into ideas and concepts. The creator has the concepts and he uses the events. I should put it that way. I guess is the better way to put it. But the creator has the ideas and the concepts, and he molds the objects and events. He molds the stuff into what we have today. And the material that we have, the stuff that we have around us is an example of thought. It is, your body contains information. Your cells contain an incredible amount of information. So the creator, with the ideas and the concepts, uses the stuff. So it's not logically unbridgeable. When you build something, when you make something, you take stuff and you put it together. You use the ideas and the concepts and the logic, and you build something together. Okay, you guys can sit down now if you want. Almost done. Oops, excuse me. Dr. Aller, who wrote this little article, goes on to point out that the sun, for example, exists 93 million miles from the earth. The sun cannot tell you that. This glass of water cannot tell you where it was just a few minutes ago. I can tell you where it was. This glass of water cannot tell you how it got full.
Very long 3/4-inch cylinder.
The glass can say nothing to you. It's an object. It's material. It's matter. It has no ideas. It has no concepts. And in fact, I will end this morning with the comment here that this will probably get me in trouble with the animal rights people, but the smartest chimp who ever lived has no more understanding of the fundamental problems of intelligence than an amoeba. To really enter the fully abstract world on the opposite side of Einstein's gulf, over to the thoughts and ideas and concepts, requires a peculiar kind of intelligence, in particular the kind that the Bible describes as the image of God. It requires power to gain access to the Logos. Words. You have to move to words. Now here lies, and I'll close with this quote from Dr. Aller. Dr. Aller, by the way, is a professor. He teaches at Southwestern Louisiana University. He's an anthropologist. Now here lies the gauntlet for evolutionary philosophies of all kinds. Let them show, if they are able, how a concrete object can become without the intervention of articulate intelligence and abstract idea. How can an object become an idea? That's the gauntlet for evolutionists. That's the problem. That's why that evolution is getting so emotional. As I shared with you last week, the Communist Chinese government has identified evolution as a religion in America. They're laughing at us because we can't talk about it without getting emotionally involved as if it were religious. But think about that. Einstein himself believed this was an unbridgeable gap, that an object, an event, could cross the bridge to ideas and concepts or thoughts. The only way to go from this bridge, from this to here, the only bridge is an outside creating intelligence that has the ideas and the thoughts to use the material, the objects and the events. Matter cannot by itself, Einstein was right, cannot by itself become an idea. Stuff cannot become a thought. A rock cannot generate a thought. A lot of evolutionists seem to have trouble generating thoughts. This is called Einstein's gulf. The only way to bridge it is with the Bible. Thank you. A bony solution. What's interesting is the evidence for design in the world around you. One of the foundations, if you will, for the creation approach, one of the things that speaks so loudly to us is the evidence of design. The very fact, for example, that I'm standing here like this It is amazing when you stop to think of what's holding me up. And this is quite a bit of weight to hold up. And I can jump. And nothing's cracking or breaking inside. It's I hope. But the bone structure in the body is one of the evidences of design that's kind of phenomenal. In fact, and this is based from an article now in New Scientist magazine, dated September 16th of the year 2000, on page 7. If you want to look it up, it's over at the UNE library. You can find them over there. We'll go back quite a few decades, actually. British architects now believe that they should change the design of bridges and structures and things of that nature to look more like bone. If you look at bridge design now, if you drive up and down the turnpike, we've got these big massive slabs of steel, right? I'm an engineer. I was involved in this for years and years. Great over-designed stuff. We make big square joints well, they've discovered that you can save a lot of material. You know how a leg bone is shaped, or how a bone is shaped? It kind of thins out in the middle and it sort of blobs out at the end and tubular. Incredible design. Well, they believe now that computer models have shown that if they design bone-like bridges, they could make them with less material, make them lighter, and significantly stronger. One researcher stated, there's no doubt the skeleton is more efficient than any man-made structure could ever be. That's a quote in New Scientist magazine, not a quote by a creationist, not a quote by a religious person, a quote by an evolutionist. There's nothing that beats the design of the bones in the human body as far as structure goes. That's an incredible thought. I used to run. I used to be svelte. That's another way of saying skinny. Believe it or not, I weighed 165 pounds. My wife came across some of the pictures of me when I was running. I was in my 40s then. I never ran a marathon. That's because I do have a measurable IQ. But I did run a lot. I've run 10-mile races. I ran the Great Pumpkin, which was popular here. I don't know if it's time. I'm out of the running scene. I don't know what races we have left. I used to run a lot of races around here. And I was intrigued back when I was 40. That's a little while ago. There was a marathon runner from Africa named Kip Keino. Does anybody remember Kip Keino? Guy was, you do something unbelievable. This man ran barefoot. He won a gold medal in the Olympic marathon running on asphalt barefoot. And he did not fracture his heel, his bones, or his legs. He trained barefoot. I used to get Runner's World magazine. And I can remember the big picture of Kip Keino right on the front, running right down, I forgot what a marathon was, running on asphalt barefoot. He won a gold medal. Now, if you listen to the ads for Nike, you have to use computer-designed sneakers, excuse me, I'm sorry, pardon me, that's a dirty word. Computer-designed running shoes to have just the exact right amount of impact absorption in the heel, etc., 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 etc. And then along comes Kip Keino out of Africa, runs barefoot. There was a lady runner named Zola Budd. Anybody remember Zola Budd? Some of you remember Zola Budd. She ran of course you guys would remember Zola Budd from South Africa. That's right. Infamous for knocking over Mary Decker Slaney. There was a little thing going on there. But anyway, she ran barefoot also. Incredible that these people can do this. Why? It's not the computer designing Nike running shoes that made the difference or makes the difference. It's God designing the bones and the structures inside of you that makes the difference. Now, I couldn't run now with or without running shoes. It doesn't make any difference. But the bone structure is an incredible design. Think of the weight that it holds up, and think of the way that it works, and think about Kip Keino and Zola Budd running on asphalt with no shoes on, not fracturing their bones. Why? Because of the design of the human skeleton. And as the engineer or the researcher from England says, there's no doubt the skeleton is more efficient than any man-made structure could ever be. So we're going to start building bridges in England, I guess, that look like bones, built out of things that look like bones. And why shouldn't the human skeleton be the best design? Look who designed it. Thank you. There were a couple marvelous ladies from West Virginia, and the lady was talking to me. She said, "Are you sure this is a Baptist church?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You didn't take an offering?" And I said, "No." I said, "It's that box right there. We never even talk about it." She said, "Well, that's very un-Baptist." This time, the creation moment is something that I took off of Microsoft Network News. An unlikely spot, I suppose, to find something that is profoundly spiritual, but I did find something that really fascinated me. And then just this morning, looking through a magazine, I came across an advertisement for Nevada. There's a time to be born and a time to die. But this ad here says, "He who has the most fun wins." And it's Greg LeMond, and Greg LeMond is a hero to me. He's the first American to win the bicycle racing in Paris, the big bike race in Paris, the Tour de France. But here's what he says: "My Nevada is a place where you can set your pace, create your legend, and celebrate life on your terms." And here's a picture of this very healthy-looking man pedaling around. And we tend to think that we're invincible, don't we? That we're going to live forever. The Scripture does say very clearly, though, in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 2, "A time to be born and a time to die." You're designed to die. It is not by accident that you and I are dying. From the moment that you were born, as your cells were accumulating themselves to build the great big mass that eventually, well, in my case, that became this. And by the way, Armin is a grandfather and Mariel is a grandmother again. Little Matthew Ronald, I keep wanting to say Rodney, little Matthew Ronald, born yesterday. And that's a celebration of life, except that that young man is designed right now to die. Negative thinking, I suppose, in a sense, but I think it brings us into, it kind of sets us back a little, doesn't it? And makes us realize that what Jesus did is so significant. What you do in this church here, when we encourage each other to prepare to go out and talk to other people, is so important. You're here for a short time. Well, here's the creation moment. Let's get back to the creation moment. Here's a man. His name is Jay Olshansky. He's a professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Illinois in Chicago, senior research associate at the Center on Aging at the University of Chicago. This is a man who is an evolutionist, not a Christian. Everyone alive will be long dead before a life expectancy of 100 years will be achieved, if ever, he says. Instead, he predicts that if the current trends in death rates continue, the average life expectancy will reach 85 by the year 2033 in France, and by the year 2182 in the U.S. Why the French live so much longer than we do, I don't know. I'm not sure. I have no answer to that. But this was the one that really grabbed me. This Dr. Leonard Hayflick, who more than 40 years ago uncovered a famous limit on the lifespan of non-cancerous human cells called the Hayflick limit. Now, Dr. Hayflick is still alive. He's professor of anatomy at the University of California, San Francisco, an evolutionist. And he is extremely well respected in the study and field of aging. And here's a quote: "All healthy human tissue is designed to age and die. A phenomenon little studied by us scientists." Let me read that one more time. All healthy human tissue is designed. That's a word here used by an evolutionist. Designed implies creator. That's the point of this creation moment this morning. The world recognizes that you are designed. He doesn't realize the full implication of what he's saying. What he's saying, he thinks people will jump on and say, well, we're all going to die. Well, I started going that way, but I'm taking a little different twist. He is now confirming, by his own quote in Microsoft Network News, read by millions of people around the world, that you and I are designed. It's not by accident. We are designed, in fact, to die. That's how God designed us right now. Not originally. Before the fall, we were designed to live forever. We now are designed, the cells are designed to die. He said, even if we eliminate all current causes of death in elderly people, the increase in life expectancy will be no more than 15 years. And if that happens, people will again die of old age. He says we need a new vocabulary of aging. From the world's point of view, a very unpleasant thought. You are designed to not be here forever. I remember when my dad was young and strong. He's dead. I remember when my mother was young and strong. She's dead. I remember my grandmother and grandfather. They're dead. You're designed to die. And what I think is so fascinating is here's an evolutionist, a man who does not believe in Creator God, that says all healthy human tissue is designed to die. You're created by the Lord Jesus Christ in His image, originally created to live forever. Because of sin, there's been a change in the creation. And we know that we have a limit. The Bible is very clear. The time of man is limited. You are designed to die. There's a time to be born and a time to die. But the good news for us is, and this is an unusual creation moment, I guess, but although it's clearly evident to all scientists that your body is designed to not make to live forever, that Jesus Christ came and died on the cross so that through Him, by faith in Him, our spirit, which is designed to live forever, will be reunited by Jesus with our body to live forever. A modified body, not one that looks like this, but one that looks better. So there's the point. Even an evolutionary scientist recognizes that you and I are designed. Thank you. I think Armin's been kissing the Blarney Stone. That's why he opened the way he did. And all these lovely faces here. You may be wondering, what's this funny box here? In fact, I had it on the floor, and when Armin and somebody else, Sarah, I guess, when came in, they thought it was a kneeler. And this is Noah's Ark. This is Noah's Ark, manufactured in very crude fashion by myself, who's not a carpenter. It's drawn to scale. This is an N-gauge scale of Noah's Ark. As best I can tell, this is the biblical description of Noah's Ark. I had some plans. I modified them only slightly. The Institute for Creation Research shows it like this with a slight pitch on the roof. But there's nothing in the Scripture that hints that they would know anything about a pitched roof. It never rained. Remember? There was never rained before Noah. This is what the ark, this is a scale model of the ark, except for the little space between the top and that should be half that size. It was so small you couldn't see it. So it's a scale model except for the air opening. Now, to put things in perspective, this is an N-gauge freight car. This is an actual N-gauge is 1 to 160. So this is a freight car manufactured to N-gauge, and when you put that in front of the ark, doesn't it kind of blow you away? People tend to laugh at you if you say, I believe in Noah's Ark. Well, how can a little wooden boat hold all those creatures? Well, number one, keep things in perspective now. Every single horse on the American, South American, and North American continent came over here on little small wooden boats. That's how they got here. They're not indigenous to these two continents. So there's nothing unusual about a wooden boat being used to introduce an animal somewhere, number one. Number two, who said it was small? You know, there are Sunday school teachers all over America, and God bless Sunday school teachers, but they have a tendency when they talk about Noah's Ark, and the Institute for Creation Research and the Answers in Genesis people really come down on this. They have a tendency to make these little wooden boats with a little pointy front end and back end with a little cover over it, and a giraffe with his neck sticking out. And you know what happens? And I agree with Ken Ham, I agree with Dr. Ham 100%. What happens, children see that, and then they realize that it's just a fairy tale, just like Santa Claus, or just like the Easter Bunny. Now, I assume that you all know that there's no such thing as the Easter Bunny, right? The Easter Bunny does not go around laying Easter eggs. And there's no Santa Claus. Right? Oops, did I say something wrong? Anyway, Christmas is about Jesus, the birth of Jesus. Easter is about the resurrection of Jesus. But let's not participate and increase the myths, if you will. Noah's Ark should not be depicted as a little wooden boat. Actually, 522 of these freight cars can go inside of Noah's Ark. And I want to carry this up. Whoa. This may not work. So that everybody can see this. Look at the perspective of this. I think some of the youngsters hadn't seen this before. Brandon? This is Noah's Ark. Imitates. This is Noah's Ark, and that's a freight car, all made to scale, to exact scale.
Well, that's something I've never seen in perspective before.
Yeah, isn't that something? When you think about it. You think, Eric, huh? Well, this is what Noah's Ark looked like. Now, why does it not have pointy ends? It didn't have to go anywhere. Were they trying to deliver something someplace? Now, Guy and myself and Ben worked at the Navy Yard on submarines. And submarines have a job. They've got to go somewhere. This didn't have to. As a matter of fact, I built a boat when I was in high school. I had an actual boat, and I just got this creative idea. I should build something, and I built this box. It looked like the kind of thing you'd mix cement in the old days. It was 4 feet wide and 8 feet long. But it floated. It didn't go very far or very well, but it floated. Well, this just struck me. I hope this gives you a perspective of the truthfulness of the Scripture. And I think it's a shame that we have a tendency in trying to make cute little Sunday school lessons, and it's a nice thing. Don't get me wrong. If one of you here has done that, praise God. You're trying, and that's good. This is kind of a new thing. The Institute for Creation Research wasn't even founded until 1964. But I think it's important that we not do anything, especially in today's day and age. 50 years ago, you didn't have to worry about it, because the kids weren't going to be taught in school that the Bible was a bunch of lies or a bunch of myths. You didn't have to worry about that. I spent 2 years as a biology major at the University of Maine. I heard evolution, I think, once. And then it was just sort of in passing, because they were busy teaching me biology. My daughter Lori mentioned that when she graduated from Maine, she felt cheated in zoology because she spent so much time having evolution pounded into her head that they missed a lot of the real essence of what is going on in the biological world. But nonetheless, Noah's Ark is not a joke. Noah's Ark is not a myth. The Bible does not contain a single myth. The Bible is 100% the revealed Word of God to man. And when the Bible says that Noah built a wooden boat and he put 2 of every animal on the earth in it, you can take that to the bank, and here is something that I hope and I pray helps you put that in perspective. Noah's Ark looked like this, not like a cute little boat. It's huge. 522 of those little railroad cars will fit inside Noah's Ark. And by the way, I've discovered you can put 50 cattle in the standard freight car, cattle car. You know, when they ship cattle, they can put 50 cattle. That's a lot of cattle. Well, 522 of those cars will fit in this huge ark. How did he do that? I have no idea. I'll tell you this, I think Noah was a lot more intelligent than any of us sitting here today, including people with PhDs from universities. Because what does a PhD mean? It's an artificial set of letters, not even an alphabetical sequence, that are assigned to people for accomplishing something. And what is it that you accomplish? You're just listening to what other people tell you. Think about it. Noah knew what he was doing. He had God with him. And when the Bible says that Noah built a boat big enough to hold 2 of every kind of animal, then he did. And I'll leave this sitting right here, just as a matter of perspective for this morning. Thank you. I went to a concert, Biddeford Middle School concert, Monday night, and I met this little guy. His name is Lee. He's a 6th grader. I wanted to hire him to bring him to church, but I don't need to this morning. Here's what happened. I was listening to a couple of young girls sing halfway through the program, and I had my eyes closed, and I was listening intently, and Lee poked my wife and said, "Hey, Wake him up and tell him to pay attention. So then I said, I was listening. I was paying attention. And my wife's going, shh, shh, shh. Anyway, we're all awake. Our eyes are all wide open. And the concert was outstanding, by the way. Kevlar. Kevlar is the strongest fiber that can be made by man. It's stronger than steel. There's a picture here of a man. You're always hearing silly comments like, real scientists believe in evolution. Real scientists would never accept creation. Well, here's a man, Dr. Patrick Young. He's Technical Service Manager at DuPont Laboratories, Ohio, USA, the holder of patents related to Kevlar and Mylar, which is used for magnetic tapes and VCRs. He was identified, voted as the Outstanding Young Man of Science of 1993, and he's a creationist. So here's the guy, here's his picture, Patrick Young. He's wearing a bulletproof vest. See, Kevlar is what's used in a well, as he says, bullet-resistant vest. He said nobody that manufactures Kevlar would call it a bulletproof vest. It's bullet-resistant. It can be penetrated. Well, there's a real scientist, and he's made a fiber, manufactures a fiber, called Kevlar. To make Kevlar requires boiling sulfuric acid. It is an extremely dangerous process. Well, he goes on to say that there's a little critter that God has designed that makes a fiber 200 times stronger for the same volume than Kevlar. And you can see whoever's cleaning the church is doing way too good a job. I wanted to find a nice big fat spider web this morning to show you. There's one in that corner over there. It's the spider web. The spider manufactures a web out of a little filament. It's a protein silk is what it is. With protein crystals, it is 200 times stronger than Kevlar, which is stronger than steel. A spider web, this diameter of, I'm going to get this right, a garden hose, about 5/8 inch diameter spider web could hold up 2 Boeing 737s fully loaded with fuel and people. Think about that. Now, what is so mysterious, miraculous about this spider web? I need some help here. How about, hey, Lauren, you want to come help me? Lauren and Chelsea? Did I do you two guys last time? Well, come on up anyway. You're about the right. A spider web is a unique thing. Now, this will be the core of the spider web. You stand there. You're the core. Hold that. And you stand over here. The spider web is manufactured of an amorphous core. It's all protein. The whole thing is protein. And it's made now, remember this now, it's not made at the boiling sulfuric acid temperature. It's made at room temperature, whatever temperature the spider's at. It has pull it tight. It has a central core. And here's what's miraculous about it. Around this central core, there are little fibers like this that are oriented longitudinally right along the central core. And then the spider, and he does all this by accident, takes and there's an outside core that's a spiral. And it holds the little fibers onto so the spider web actually looks like that. It has a spiral wrapped around little shorter fibers that go the whole length of this main spider web, all wrapped around an amorphous or solid core. That's why it's so strong. Okay, you guys can sit down. Thank you. And it does it without thinking about it. And there's a cute little note here. It says it can also do it 10 times faster than a man can manufacture a web. I was sitting at a local fast food restaurant. I won't tell you which one. I don't want to get sued if this goes on television. And I'm sitting there, and I was in Biddeford, and there was a Thornton spider. It was bright yellow. And he was hanging from way up in the ceiling and just coming down. And I noticed that when I moved, he went whoop, like this. It's absolutely flabbergasting. God's creature can manufacture a fiber 200 times stronger than the fiber strongest fiber made by man. And God's creature does it inside a little tiny body. By the way, he can spend more than his volume and weight in a day. Can you imagine if we could do something like that? I mean, it just blows you away. This little creature designed by God. Evidence for design. I really honestly believe the one biblical statement made in the Bible that can be tested scientifically is the statement, and God created. Because you would be a lunatic to think that this could happen by accident. The best brains of mankind today using computers cannot manufacture a fiber that is 1/200th as strong as what that funny little spider does. It's given me a new appreciation for spiders. I didn't realize this myself, by the way, how the spider web is. So my wife asked me, did you step on that spider at the local restaurant? And I said, no, because he landed on the floor and scurried off. I said, well, you know, he won't hurt anything. It's a big restaurant. So God is great. The design of God is awesome. Thank you.